Hey y'all, this is job searching part 7, and this will be the last job searching video for hopefully quite a while. Now you guys know, because I mentioned in other videos, that I do now have a full-time job, and I'm hopefully going to be staying there for quite a while. But with that being said, I just kind of left off in job searching 6, questioning an interview I just had, and I want to tell you guys what happened between there and me getting this job. So, job searching 6 was about me getting a job at Lyft. And I can tell you I'm still doing my job I was doing at Lyft, but I didn't get the new job there. I'm going to explain that a little bit. The job interview process, after I had that last interview where I was very confused about the pay, I decided right after I made that video to break down the numbers. I emailed the recruiter and I said, hey, you know what? Actually, I'm going to end up making about $200 more per month working this new position than I am currently. So yeah, let's move forward with it. That's what I had told her that we were going to do. I had told her, no, I can't go forward with the interview right now because I need to see if this would work for me. That was the agreement we made. So I did that, and then I didn't hear anything back. And in the meantime, the person who is a community assistant here in Columbus, who at the time was the only one, she reached out to me on LinkedIn, and she's like, hey, did you have any more questions about your interview? And I said, well, this and that, and here's a few things. And she's like, okay. And she found those things out for me. And she asked me again, hey, did you hear anything back? And I said, well, no. And I told her what happened with the interview. And I said, I followed up several times now, and the interviewer won't respond to me. And she kind of made a remark that was, I don't think, fair. She said something like, well, maybe you shouldn't have told her that that wasn't enough for you. And I'm like, well, that's not really what I said. I said that I needed to see. I didn't think it was going to be, but I needed to see and crunch the numbers. And then, if it would work for me, then we would continue at a later date. That was what we agreed to on the phone. So obviously this person, the recruiter, has told her what happened because that's the only way she would have known. And then I don't know. I didn't get it. And so when I replied, I said, well, look, I just think the whole thing has been handled unprofessionally because there's not a reason for this recruiter to ignore or refuse to communicate with an internal job candidate, even to just say you're no longer a candidate or something like that. But I'm already working for the company. You're going to run into me and see me eventually. You can't just ignore me. And that's basically what was done. Emails were not responded to. Voicemail left was not listened to. What I eventually had to do, I actually, on LinkedIn, sent a message to the vice president of Lyft because I've met him once before. He knows who I am. And I explained the situation, told him what happened, and I said, hey, I cannot get this recruiter to respond to me, and I was supposed to check on this. So he didn't respond to me, and I don't know if he did anything. It may have been him that led to the next step, but I eventually got a call from the recruiter, and she didn't sound annoyed or anything, but what she did say is she's like, yeah, well, I canceled or deleted your application or something like that after you told me that it wouldn't work. Now, I didn't want to argue with her because I was trying to get this job, but I really wanted to say, well, you shouldn't have done that because that's not what we said we were going to do. But, of course, I didn't say it. Looking back on it now, I kind of wish I had. But, anyway, so that she's like, okay, well, let's set up a time to do another phone interview. So I then have another phone interview with this recruiter, who is the same recruiter that I had before, the same interview step that I was in before, And I'm thinking, well, this person is mad at me now because of this. She's behaved in this way. She's avoided me. And I had to go to like her boss's boss's boss in order to get her to respond. Like, she's not going to move me on to the next step. And I was certain that is what happened because I didn't hear anything for like 2 weeks afterwards. And then I got an email from yet another recruiter saying, hey, let's schedule the next step of the interview process. Now, this interview was with the regional manager. And I've met him before on several occasions. He knows me. And this was a phone interview. And in this phone interview, he basically told me that a lot of the stuff that I was told about the job was totally wrong. Because I had told the recruiter, hey, part of why this won't work out for me is because it has this variable schedule and I'm not going to know my schedule ahead of time. So with the reduced pay, I'm not going to be able to do it because I would have to maintain these part-time jobs and I can't do that if this schedule keeps changing. That is what she told me. But then I talked to the regional manager, who is the actual supervisor of the position. He's like, no, that's not right. Like, no, you're going to have the same schedule every week. So, sorry, the neighbor across the courtyard from me has his cat on a leash playing in the snow. Anyway, so what ended up happening was I went through this interview. He basically told me that everything that I knew about the position was wrong, made it sound like it was actually much more viable than I had thought. And so now I'm confused. I'm like, why would the recruiter tell me all this wrong information about it? Because I would have been upset if I'd not taken the job and told her I couldn't do it based on false information. So anyway, I passed this phone interview and I get called in for an in-person interview. This is where things go downhill at this point. Now, I've lost track of how many interviews I've had. This is like maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 interviews for this position. The regional manager reaches out to me, asks when I'm available for an interview. And then after I tell him, he sends it back to a different recruiter, so like the third or fourth recruiter I've worked with, and she sends me a date and time, and it's like the next day, basically. She asked me when, and I said, well, my schedule is really tight right now, but I could come in before my other job. I just have to leave by this point. Well, what she did is she scheduled, let's say I said that I could do 10 a.m. at the latest. Well, she scheduled it for like 11 a.m. So I'm like, maybe with my transportation, maybe I can just, not supposed to, but violate Lyft policy and take a super long and expensive Uber ride straight there, and maybe I can make it work. I didn't want to miss the interview, but like she just brazenly ignored the availability that I told her. And then in her email, she just said, say like 11 a.m. And I emailed her back and I was like, hey, is this like Central Time? Because she's on Central Time, or is this Eastern Time? I'm confused. And she's like, oh, sorry, it's Central Time, but let me check on that. She's like, I'm going to be in the car for the next 4 hours and I won't have access to my email, so I'm going to text you when I find out. So the recruiter starts texting me on her drive wherever she was, and then keeps texting me through like 11 o'clock the night before the interview. And I still have no clue like what time I need to be there. And like I needed to tell her, hey, the time that you told me doesn't work for me, but I couldn't even get her to confirm what the time was, whether it was Central or Eastern. So the morning of the interview comes around and I text the recruiter early in the morning and I'm like, hey, did you get the time situation figured out? No response. I email her. No response. And I never did get a response from that recruiter. Just completely ghosted me. And I thought the whole like texting me late at night thing was kind of weird too, but like never followed up with me, even after multiple attempts. And I'm just trying to straighten out her mess of like not knowing the time zones and trying to figure out the right time to be at my interview. So they give me a Lyft credit, $25 Lyft credit to get there. And I thought, this is a nice touch. I've heard of people, being flown to their interviews if it's in a different city or something. I've heard of this sort of thing, but it's never been done for me. So it's a nice touch that I get this Lyft credit. Two problems with this. Number one, it was like a $23 ride from my house to the place where my interview was. So for me, not really a problem, because I can use my Uber credits or my Uber thing to get back, because Lyft's going to pay for that. But that wouldn't work for anybody else who's not a recruiter for Lyft. So what would have happened if I were anybody else is I would have gotten there and then had no way to get back, because obviously I don't have my car if I went with Lyft, and I wouldn't be able to go anywhere else. I'd have to pay for my trip home, which I would have been upset about. The second thing that is bad about this is I'm very confused about when my interview is still. So I don't know I'm there at the right time. And let me just say this. Lyft is a super casual company where you wear jeans and t-shirt, pretty much. And the recruiter tells me to dress up. Now, I am guilty of usually wearing a suit to an interview. But I knew with Lyft how we dress, so I was going to dress that way. But this recruiter tells me to wear like nice khakis and dress shoes and a dress shirt. So I do that. And I'm completely out of place. I feel so awkward, so overdressed. I even had to bring it up with the interviewer because I'm like, the recruiter told me to dress this way. But I felt like I didn't fit in to the vibe there because of how I was dressed. And I'm thinking, once again, the recruiter gave me false information. So anyway, when I get there, I was told to call the regional manager, and they gave me a cell phone number. I call him, and there's no answer. Now, it's Columbus, it's by the river, it is absolutely freezing, it's probably below zero with the wind chill. I'm standing outside in dress clothes in a very bad neighborhood. Why they have the office there, I don't know. But I'm there, and I cannot get, this guy won't respond to me. So I'm like, okay, look, I'm 10 minutes early for my interview. I'm going to stand out here for 25 minutes. If I don't hear anything, 15 minutes after the hour, I'm leaving. And about 5 to 10 minutes after the hour, I see this girl standing outside. She's just like propping a door open on a different side of the building than I was told to go to. And she's just standing there. She doesn't seem to be looking around. She doesn't seem to be looking for anyone or anything like that. Literally just standing there. I thought maybe she was smoking or something. And I get a call from the regional manager, and he's like, hey, are you coming upstairs? And I said, well, I was like, no, which door do I go in? And he's like, oh, well, this person is standing outside looking for you. And I was like, oh, well, I don't see anyone. And he's like, well, go to the blue door, and she'll be standing there. And I realized that the person who was just standing outside is the person he's talking about. So this person came downstairs and was supposed to be looking for me. I'm standing probably 100 feet away from her. I'm the only person standing out on the street. And she made no effort whatsoever to speak to me, make contact with me, even look like she was looking for anyone. I don't get it. And so anyway, I go up to her. I tell her who I am, and she walks me up to the office. Now, my interview was supposed to be with the regional manager. But as soon as I get to the office, he walks out. He's on the phone. Kind of blows me off. I go into the office with her, and she tells me I'm going to interview with her first. Now, keep in mind, this is the girl that I told over when she contacted me on LinkedIn message that, I felt the whole thing was being handled unprofessionally. Which I'm sure didn't go over well, even though it's true. Um, and guys, let me tell you, this office is a disaster. Uh, like, literally, when I walked in, she told me to sit on the couch. There was a half-eaten Pop-Tart sitting in front of me, on the table. I had to brush off the couch when I sat down, and she's like, yeah, sorry about that, the ceiling's caving in. And I look up, and, like, sure enough, it is. Like, it's an old warehouse they've converted into co-working spaces, and sure enough, like, the building's falling apart. So I'm sitting under the building falling apart, and then I was extremely uncomfortable during the interview because of the way that I was dressed, and on top of that, I still had my coat on. They didn't have anywhere, like, take your coat off or anything like that. So I'm wearing a heavy coat, and the heater, because this building doesn't have heat, they've got these little space heaters, and it's right at my back. So I am, like, burning up the entire interview. It's just every part of it was so uncomfortable. Well, anyway, despite the previous conversation with this girl, the interview actually went really well. She was really understanding about, my past jobs and things like that. She told me, yeah, she had 7 interviews before she got her position. Everything was good. Everything was cool. Then the regional manager comes in. He asks me a few questions. He tells me a little bit more about the position. And again, contradicts a lot of the stuff that I was told before. And then at the end of it, he brings up, he's like, well, like, how much are you thinking of making? And I said, well, I thought when I applied it was $18 an hour. The recruiter told me it was $15.08. And anyway, so he, like, basically knew all this. He's like, yeah, she told me that you said that it wasn't, enough to work for you. And I was like, well, I didn't exactly say that. And I kind of called out the recruiter. I said, she was supposed to let me check the numbers and get back to her. And I didn't quite say, she avoided me and everything after that. But I was like, well, that's not really right. But now I know that the recruiter sort of, I don't know, went to the regional and said some bad things to me or about me. I don't know. So anyway, he's like, look, we've met before. You've interviewed with me before. He's like, I know you do good work. He's like, but there's 2 issues. He's like, I don't think that you're gonna make enough money here to be happy. And I was like, well, I don't know. And I told him, I was like, I don't know that I agree with that, because it's a hell of a lot more money than I make now. And it's, in the company and the industry that I want to work with. And then the other thing that he said is, how I told you in the phone interview that you could continue being a recruiter? Well, he's like, I found out that's not the case. And it turns out, I don't know. I don't know what changed with that, but I don't think that I can legitimately give up being a recruiter for Lyft. And I certainly can't do it right now because that's my only transportation. So that's not even an option. But even after I got the car fixed, I think I would make more money being a recruiter than I would working full-time doing this. I'm just doing it because I like it, and I wanted to work. It's a good company to work for, and I know that. But if it's going to take away my opportunity to be a recruiter, then, yeah, no, I don't think it is going to work. So anyway, he just said, he's like, I definitely want to bring you on at some point. He's like, but I just don't think this is the right position because, it doesn't pay enough. And I guess because it wouldn't work with recruiting, I mean, maybe there's another position later on that would work with recruiting. I don't know. But in the back of my mind, and I'm going to get to this, but I already had, when I walked into this interview, I already had the job offer for the job I took. And my new job pays $15 an hour. And this job would have paid $15.08 an hour. So he's saying, well, you wouldn't be happy you're not making enough money. But I'm in my head thinking, well, if you don't give me this position, I'm going to take a job that pays 8 cents less an hour. So I'm going to be happy with that. Anyway, I just walked away from it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I did thank him for just being honest with me and saying he wasn't going to hire me. instead of like stringing me along or making me think I was going to get hired or something. I'm not holding my breath that he is going to have any positions open in the future. He mentioned ones in Cleveland and Cincinnati, but I'm not moving. I'm stuck here. I'm not going to break my lease and move. It would have to be something here in Columbus. And so even if he had one of those available coming soon, well, I'm not going to take that. And also now I've accepted this other job, so it's just, yeah, I mean, I just don't think it's going to work. But I definitely disagree with the pay. And I definitely felt like I was pretty misled in the whole recruiter being unprofessional thing through the whole thing. I don't like that at all. So, knowing that I had that other job on the table, as soon as he told me he wasn't going to hire me for this position, I went and I accepted it. All right, but I haven't mentioned this job, I don't think, in any previous videos, so I want to just kind of say like what it is. I'm going to make a separate video talking about the actual job and what I'm doing and pay and all that stuff, but I wish I could say like, hey, I did something and I found this other job, but I didn't. It came to me, and I couldn't tell you how I got it. The best I can do is I can say that I got a message on LinkedIn from a recruiter. The recruiter, the company she was listed as working for, is not the company she linked me to. She linked me to a job. It's like a job search platform for jobs in the tech startups sector, I guess is the best way to put it. And when she told me about the job, I was like, oh, well, you know, that's cool. So basically a recruiter from one company linked me to a job platform that she doesn't seem to be affiliated with, so I don't know where this came from. I filled that out, applied for a job on that platform, and got interviewed and hired for the first job that I applied for on there. That's the simplest way to explain all that. So it was sort of 3 companies, 3 people, 3 separate steps, but it came to me. It came to me through a link on LinkedIn, and then the job platform, and then I guess I passed the little test things they had us do online, and then they brought me in for an interview, and I almost wasn't going to take it because the way they described it was very vague and sounded kind of fishy. And, you know, after the bad experiences that I've had, I'm kind of suspicious about jobs. So I basically told the recruiter, I was like, well, you know what I want to do? I was like, she asked me if I wanted to come in for an interview. And I was like, I don't really know that I want to interview. I want to come in and I want to see the work environment. And surprisingly, she was okay with that. I really didn't interview for the position. I just came in and I saw the office and I saw the area I was going to be working in. That was it. And after I saw it, I was like, okay, this alleviates a lot of my fears. And later in the day, she sent me an offer email. And the next day, after it didn't work out with Lyft, I took it. So I started on January 2nd, and I am going to make a video about the job, a little bit more about it, and how having that income is going to affect me financially. Separate video. But anyway, guys, that's where it stands. I am not sure now if I'm ever going to move out of the recruiter position with Lyft. I may just be kind of stuck here, which maybe isn't entirely bad. And I am working for a different tech startup now, and that's my full-time job. So, you know, I mean, I guess it had a happy ending. We'll see. But anyway, stay tuned. I'm going to make a video about that new job. That should hopefully be up here in January. But for now, that's the end of the job searching series. So thank you guys for watching, and now you can stay tuned to see, now that I got this money coming in, what kind of progress I can make with it.